Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig Lindell, and today is a Pearl Jam podcast. But first, how's it going, Andrew?
Going pretty good, Craig. At the time of us recording this, it is the day after my birthday. I turned 45, and
Happy birthday, you old bastard.
Thank you very much. But I think like my 40th birthday didn't faze me at all. But my 45 has a little bit, like, because it's like halfway to 50, and 40 just didn't sound that old to me, but 50 sounds old. And it's like weird to think about that I'm halfway to that point where that age really sounds old. When you start saying 50, that's getting close.
I agree.
Kind of messing with me a little bit, but
I totally hear you.
They say that's like the ultimate proof that, the 50 is the new 40, and it's definitely true. Like 40 seemed old when I was a kid, and maybe it felt for our parents, maybe it felt this way that like 40 didn't seem old. I don't know, but like I don't know, 50 just hits different than 40.
Yes. However, I will say that age is a lot different in our time than it was for our parents. I feel like 40 and 45-year-olds were grown people, not living fun lives and doing fun things, not going to 2 Pearl Jam shows at Fenway, not doing podcasts with their friends about music.
Isn't that the truth?
I think this generation, whether we are the youngest Gen Xers or the oldest millennials, however you want to call it, I think we are living more youthful lives longer. And maybe that makes us less mature. Maybe that means we're living in suspended animation. I don't know, but I don't know what else to do. It's just how I want to live.
The only question is whether our parents were just better at hiding it.
I think that's probably true.
Which might be, maybe it's more acceptable to be immature at 40 than it was a generation before us. I don't know. Or maybe I'm grasping at straws, and it's just the way of life.
So be it. All right, we have one last new metal poem before we get into the 2 Pearl Jam Fenway shows. So let's send it off on a high note, Andrew.
So I'm sad that this is our final poetry reading, and there's only one because this one can't be combined with any others. We're going out with an absolute bang. This is the perfect way to end this poetry book. Shout out to Dan Ozzi, by the way. I just want to, again, this came with his book Sellout that I bought. He just threw this in there, and it's such a funny idea to just take these little clips of these lyrics and take them out of context and read them as poetry. And it's really been fun. And I'm definitely going to miss having this as a part of our podcast. But all right, it's a long one, but there's no better way for us to end this new metal poetry than this. So here we go. Should I be feeling bad? No. Should I be feeling good? No. It's kind of sad. I'm the laughing stock of the neighborhood, and you would think that I'd be moving on. But I'm a sucker, like I said, fucked up in the head, and maybe she just made a mistake, and I should give her a break. My heart will ache either way. Hey, what the hell? What do you want me to say? I won't lie. That I can't deny. I did it all for the Nookie.
Man, let's talk about Nookie for just a minute. You want to talk about the ultimate dichotomy in terms of...
I'm so glad you said this.
In terms of new metal and that era of music, it is, on one hand, some of the most infectious guitar groove you'll ever hear in your entire life. It's just awesome. And then the lyrics come in and you're just embarrassed to be bouncing your head. But the groove is undeniable.
There is no song that has a better song musically and just cringeworthy lyrics on the words side. And I still remember I was in my dorm room when I first saw the video for Nookie. And I just remember when they got to that chorus, like I'm saying, I'm like, oh, the song's cool, you know. And he gets to the chorus, I'm like, is he saying what I think he's saying? Like, what? Like, what on earth is this? Like, it was so bad lyrically, but the song itself is so freaking good. And that's sort of the Limp Bizkit experience, sort of. I mean, you know, I don't know that I would say they have a ton of like great albums, but like Wes Borland has always been an awesome guitar player. He writes some of the coolest guitar parts, and everybody reveres him as a guitarist. He's really well liked. And, you know, you can say what you want about Fred Durst's delivery. You know, I think it's fine for this music, his delivery, but man, his lyrics are routinely just awful, awful, awful. But
They're awful. And on top of it, the band's evolution, if you want to call it that, or devolution, de-evolution, you know, they went from being kind of a metal hardcore band where Fred was rapping and whining a little bit, but screaming a lot, to
yeah.
just whining and rapping. And when they lost that edge, I remember buying this album because I loved $2 Bill Y'all. I thought it was really cool. And then I bought this album and I listened to it once or twice, and I gave it to my friend who lived down the hall in my college apartment building, and I didn't regret it for even a minute.
Is it $2 bill or $3 bill?
$3 bill, y'all. You're right.
Okay. I like you. You had me doubting myself there. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
is it? Because I was thinking it was $3. Yeah, but $3 bill, y'all, is one of the coolest albums. Like when I first heard that, it was like the production is so raw on it. Like it's I don't know, like it sounds so different from the follow up that like I don't know, like it was like you could just like hear these like really interesting musical ideas on $3 bill, y'all. And then you saw like, okay, once they started throwing some production into it, like it really took off. It's easy to see why it was so popular. And I will always like appreciate Limp Bizkit for what they were. And in that moment, they were a revolutionary sound. Like there was just nothing else like them.
And for
You
anybody
know,
who thinks that we're wrong or that Andrew is just talking out of his ass, you had to be there. You really had to be there. I'm
yeah,
telling you, he's right. It
yeah.
was reasonable to appreciate that first record and think like, all right, this is interesting. I want to see where they go next. And then it's also
And then
reasonable to say, I don't like where they went next.
yeah, yeah, and like so significant other like just has a lot of like very interesting songs, like a lot of just some songs that are very melodic on that, like some really nice grooves on it, some heavy stuff. And then after that, like like the Chocolate Starfish album, which is just an awful album title.
Oh, don't
That
forget the hot dog
was
flavored water.
and the hot dog flavored water, of course. And then Wes left the band for a while. They put out an album with another guitarist. I don't even remember what that album was called anymore. Um, I will say though, they put out an EP when Wes came back called The Unquestionable Truth Part 1. And I stand by that to this day. I think that is an excellent EP.
I never listened
And
to it.
yeah, no, you should check it out sometime. It's actually very good. But yeah, I mean, I've certainly like it was such a for me, like I think that there are still some hardcore Limp Bizkit fans, but for me it was very much a flash in the pan sort of very brief period of time. But man, when Nookie came out, like that was like the peak of Total Request Live on MTV, and like in an era in which boy bands were kind of taking over. Rap was coming to the forefront, and
Yeah,
Limp Bizkit
TRL was all
really just
Backstreet, Britney, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, and then, Blink 182.
yeah, yeah. So like Limp Bizkit was like a breath of fresh air for rock fans too, that there was something that could still represent strongly in that era. And so yeah, I think I think for people to judge today, like what they sound like, is probably not really fair, like you said, to what it was like in that moment when they came out. So props to Limp Bizkit. Like I said, that's really the way the new metal poetry book had to end. There was no other choice than Nookie to close this out.
And I figure there's probably like a 30-40% chance that I end up seeing Limp Bizkit sometime in the next few years at some festival where I didn't really intend to see them,
Have
but
you
they
seen
just
them
happened to
before?
be there. I saw them at Ozfest '99 when Tool played, and they
Yeah.
came out of a three-story tall toilet.
Yeah, I remember
Uh,
that. I didn't
yeah,
see him on that, but I remember that. I saw him on the Summer Sanitarium when we talked in a previous episode about Linkin Park. They were
yeah.
also on that same that lineup was wild. Like you had Deftones, Mudvayne, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, Metallica. Like what a wild lineup that was.
I stand by Mudvayne, by the way. That's a future episode.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, but this week we've buried the lead long enough. We're here to talk about maybe the greatest concert week of my life. I went to Boston to see Pearl Jam twice in Fenway, and then later on I found out that Manchester Orchestra was playing House of Blues on Saturday night in Boston. Military Gun opened up, and then to cap it all off, I'm wearing the T-shirt Foxing played back in Cleveland this past Saturday. So in 7 days, I saw Manchester Orchestra, Military Gun, Pearl Jam, Pearl Jam, Foxing, with a little bit of Glenn Hansard opening the Pearl Jam shows. So
and Olivia
honestly,
Vedder.
it was way too much for my 45-year-old self in a 7 day span, but I'm happy I did it.
Yeah.
So let's go straight. Let's go chronologically.
Okay.
So we fly into Boston. We get to the House of Blues, and Military Gun takes the stage. And you're a big Military Gun fan, correct?
Huge Military Gun fan. It was what their album was one of my 10 favorite. I don't remember where I placed it in my rankings, but it was the top 10 album of the year. I think it was even top 5 for me last year. I absolutely love that album.
So I liked it. You know, for me, it was probably like a 6 or a 7. Probably didn't crack my top 10, but after seeing them live, that band jumped big time. They are very different live. They're a lot less produced, a lot more raw, a lot more of that punk rock, kind of the shouty, the sing shout comes through a lot better. They're very good at pulling it off live. Um, they sound like they're hitting those same notes live, which was really great. The two singers playing off each other, it was just awesome.
So Ian Shelton, the primary vocalist, he is an absolute rock star in a band that's not rock star size, but he is an absolute rock star. He's got just oozes charisma. He is an awesome interview. Like go to YouTube and just Google an Ian Shelton interview. He's really insightful. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's everything you want in a front man. But he has the chops too. Like not only is he a great singer for this style of music, he's a great songwriter. He's also a really good drummer. So he drums in Regional Justice Center, which is a
Oh wow.
hardcore band. So that's where I first actually knew about him, and how I found out about Military Gun was because of Regional Justice Center, which was a hardcore band that I love. And I'll just gloss over this real quick, but the backstory is Ian's brother, when he was like 18 years old or something, or 19, 20, somewhere like that. He was really young. He was incarcerated, I think, for assault, and spent years in prison. And so Ian formed Regional Justice Center, which is the name of the facility where his brother was at. And his brother would write lyrics from prison and send them to Ian, and he would perform them in this band. He was the drummer and singer of Regional Justice Center. And to get Regional Justice Center, pure hardcore. I mean, Ian doesn't sing in that. He was screaming in that band, but it was dealing with all the raw emotions of that experience, of what that was like to have a brother become incarcerated, how it just threw a grenade into his family life and the structures around him. And it's really an interesting backstory. And anyways, through that, then I knew then, okay, he had this, what I thought was a side project, Military Gun, which now I would say Military Gun is significantly more popular than Regional Justice Center. But I fell in love with that Military Gun album. I'm a huge fan, particularly of Ian Shelton. He's really a very really creative musical mind, and I'm really interested to see where he can take Military Gun. I think that there's potential for that band to become even bigger yet than they are. I mean, they're definitely growing, but I think they have potential to be even bigger.
So, interesting tidbit from Military Gun set. They talked about the song that they did with Manchester Orchestra and how that came to be. And turns out they had no connection to Manchester Orchestra at all, except they were admirers. And, California band Military Gun doesn't know the Georgia band at all. They sent a message, they sent an email or something, got through to Manchester Orchestra and said, hey, it'd be really fun to do a song together. And all of a sudden, Manchester Orchestra had tracks back in their hands, and
that's awesome.
The song came together, and then they brought Military Gun on this tour in celebration of the 10th anniversary of Manchester Orchestra's album Cope. But just this speaks to Manchester Orchestra and the people that they are in terms of what they're trying to build in terms of a musical community out of nothing. They've done projects with all kinds of different people. Phoebe Bridgers covered one of their songs. They've done stuff with Paris Jackson. They seem Michigander. They seem to have a very big tent, and they seem intent on making that bigger all the time, which is just really admirable. I love to hear stuff like that.
Yeah. Before we solely get into Manchester Orchestra, just to tie a bow real quick, and not to derail this into the Regional Justice Center podcast, but it is so his brother got out of prison, and Regional Justice Center just last week put out a new album, and his brother is the main vocalist in it now. And they even got Taylor Young, who produced the album. He's the brother, him and Colin Young, who does the Hard Lore podcast. They're brothers. They're in the band Twitching Tongues. Taylor Young has produced so many great hardcore albums. He's sort of the Rick Rubin of hardcore. Like, if you want an awesome producer in hardcore, you turn to Taylor Young.
That's funny to be the Rick Rubin of hardcore.
Yeah, Taylor Young would probably hate that comparison. But I just mean in terms of, like, he's like the go-to guy. Like, if you can get him, if you're in hardcore and you can get Taylor Young to produce your album, like, you'll do that. He did the first Regional Justice Center album. He did the Military Gun album. He did Year of the Knife. On and on and on. So many albums that he's done over the last couple of years that have been phenomenal. So it's a really good album. The new Regional Justice Center album, it's called Freedom, came out last week. So worth checking out if you're into hardcore at all. So anyways, yeah. We can cycle back to Manchester Orchestra, and I'll let you talk. Yeah. But
so, all due respect to Pearl Jam and any other live bands that are going today, my hot take is that I think Manchester Orchestra is the best current working live band. I think of all the rock bands that I actively listen to who's putting out important work to add to their career at the moment, I can't think of anybody doing it better live than Manchester Orchestra. They're tight. Andy Hall sings his ass off every single show. He never takes a note off. Andy Prince on the bass is one of the most entertaining dudes I've ever seen live. Rob singing the harmonies and Tim on the drums. It's a well-oiled machine, but not so well-oiled that it feels stale or boring. I also have some issues with bands playing entire albums front to back, which we've talked about, but Cope worked. It's not even close to my favorite Manchester Orchestra record, but this album just flows. It belongs. It doesn't hurt to hear it front to back. It was really great. So they played the entire album it was so funny. After the scripture, Andy Hall had to stop the show because a fight broke out in the pit. It wasn't really a mosh pit per se, but a couple of guys were like getting into it and needed to be separated. And Andy would just like looked at them dismissively and was like, "You go over there, you go over there." During this song of all songs, and he restarted the whole thing. And they restarted after the scripture from the top. Then they closed their main set with the silence, and then they came back for the encore. They played the Maze, the Gold, Bedhead, and crushed the room with Shake It Out. And you just, I mean, I'm getting chills even talking about it. If you have ever listened to this band at all and you haven't seen them live, you absolutely have got to do it. They are so good. But a lot of what we were talking about with the saturation of tickets, I don't think the show sold out. You're in a city like Boston where everybody thinks of Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Boston College, but there's like Emerson, Berkeley. There are 100 colleges in Boston, and they didn't sell out the show on a Saturday night at the House of Blues, which is right out over the. It's on Lansdowne Street, which is just over the Green Monster from Fenway. It couldn't be more centrally located. I was kind of blown away, and that's not to take a shot at anybody. It's just probably to recognize where we are in terms of the concert industry.
And that's interesting because you and I saw Manchester Orchestra together here in Columbus, 2-3 years ago. And they
very
played
similar venue to the House of Blues.
Kemba Live. They played the indoor section, and that room was packed. That show was absolutely packed. So little surprised actually to find out that they didn't sell that out. And I'll just echo everything Craig has said. I saw Manchester Orchestra over a decade ago on their Mean Everything to No One. Is that, I always screw that up. Is it
Mean Everything to Nothing?
Mean Everything to Nothing. I saw them on that tour at the Newport in Columbus, and they were great then. But seeing them on the Million Masks tour, like just a totally different band. Like they had matured in so many ways. Such a better live sound for the band. Like they're like the perfect band for that size of venue. I was just blown away from beginning to end of that show. Absolutely loved it. And like it's funny because, you know, I think I'm sure I probably talked about this before, but Cope was kind of the album where I officially went all the way out on Manchester Orchestra for a while. And I just really fell out of touch with them. And it wasn't until the Million Masks of God came out that I sort of got back into them. But I can actually like appreciate what you were saying. Like I can hear how to see this in a live setting, some of these songs might translate a little bit better when you're in the room with them performing those songs. It's like, I don't think it's a particularly great studio album. Like it's, to put it on and just listen to, I think you really have to be in the right sort of mood or frame of mind for it. But to be in the room with them performing those songs, I actually can see how that would really suit those songs really well.
Well, and I don't want to, you know, is it called retcon, where you retrofit the story later?
Sure.
But I think Cope, if you really think about it and look back on it today, I'm combining two things. Number one, that was the first album where Andy Prince had joined the band as the bass player. And number two, I heard a story, I think it was the podcast, I can't remember which podcast, maybe You Made It Weird. Andy Hull was on there, and he talked about how they were playing a festival or some big show, and they were all just kind of miserable. And they were acting kind of sullen on stage. And I think Andy Hall said that Andy Prince looked at everybody and pointed at the crowd and said, "Hey, they're all having a really great time. What if we did too?" And so if I'm remembering it all correctly, and that Andy Prince was the one who said that, and he's the one who joined the band for Cope, and that's kind of the second phase of the band, it makes a lot of sense. Because I saw them on the Simple Math tour. And granted, the Cleveland audience at the Beachland was a little bit overserved, which Cleveland audiences tend to be. and they were making too much noise during all the precious moments, and Andy didn't deal with it well. He
Yeah.
was kind of pissy about it, and rather than dealing with it and making the best of it and owning the room, he kind of let it bring him down and bring the band down, and he was just kind of pissy. There's no other way to say it. Um, and that band, I don't think that band exists anymore. Even when he's breaking up a fight in the middle of after the scripture and restarting the song, like
Yeah.
they're just more mature, they're more road tested, they but not stale and not sterile. They're just awesome.
I'm all in totally here for the Andy Prince appreciation moment here. He is, I mean, setting aside like Les Claypool, who is in a category of his own when it
Yeah.
comes to like everything you would want in a live bass player. Andy Prince is that. I would like. I'm biased here, but I would put him and Jeff Ament as two of my absolute favorite bass players to see live. There you see, bass is the first instrument I played. I have a soft spot in my heart for bass players, but very often when you see live bands, the bass player isn't in the forefront of your attention. A lot of times they can easily be drowned in the mix and they're just kind of in the background playing. But I would say that Jeff Ament and Andy Prince are two bass players that are much more upfront. They're an integral part of that live experience. The way they play translates so well live. You notice what they're playing live. And who's another one I would throw in there is oh my gosh, what's her name? Who just got fired from the Pixies? Paz.
Paz Lynn Chanton, or
Yeah. She was also awesome live. She had a presence to her live that was great too. But yeah,
didn't she
Andy
play with
Prince.
the Perfect Circle for a while as well?
Yeah, she did. She did. She might have even played with Smashing Pumpkins. I think maybe.
I think you're right.
She's like in that like circle, in that world. All those, it seems like a lot of members between the Perfect Circle, Smashing Pumpkins, all kind of have some interchangeable parts. But
Yeah.
yeah. But and Andy Prince is just like, he carries a massive presence online, and like obviously Andy Hall is obviously the main focus of attention.
Oh yeah.
It's his band, don't get me wrong, but
As
like,
goes Andy, goes Manchester Orchestra.
right. But Andy Prince just adds this dynamic that I really felt like maybe they were lacking prior to that. So
I'm
I'm
just
here
gonna
for
I'm
all the
just gonna play
appreciation.
fan fiction and assume he's the glue guy.
Yeah.
He's the glue guy,
Yep.
and
We can
until
project. We
proven
can project
otherwise.
on that. Yeah.
All right, so that was Saturday night. Wake up Sunday, go to the Browns backers bar, watch the Browns win a game, even though I didn't really care what happened, and then we head to Fenway nice and early on Sunday, September 15th. We had really great seats that night. They were not the 10 Club seats. We paid a little bit more for those seats, but we were down on the field, and I picked the section right in front of the soundboard. And I would say that I made a very good decision. The sound was incredible. We were able to see the visuals really well. It was hard to see the band like in person that well. They were a little bit small, but the video element, I mean, whenever you go to a big festival or a big stadium show, like a baseball stadium show, you're relying on the video feeds. And it's a little bit weird to watch the band that's performing on stage kind of on TV, live in the venue. But I'm telling you, it worked. It was great. Um, but let's talk about the set list, Andrew, because night one in Fenway, they opened with Footsteps, Release, Given to Fly, Hail Hail, Corduroy, and then launched into the Dark Matter stuff. But those
So
first
can
five,
I
I was out
let me
of my mind. I will let you in, but I just have to say, those first five, I was already out of my mind.
So I want to dive deeper into that opening five, But I do want to talk a little bit more before you get there about the venue
Mhm.
itself. So I asked you
Yes.
a few questions already, but I really have been reserving this for the podcast. So we have a tendency of talking too much in DMs and blowing our load on some of these conversations through DMs. I purposefully didn't ask you anything about the venue itself. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about what it was like being in a baseball stadium for a tour, because I've never seen a show in a baseball stadium before, and I'm curious to know. I know you had great seats, but did you get a feel just in general how it feels? Does the sound feel different than like a well, not an auditorium, but a outdoor amphitheater type venue, and just the sights and sounds and just how that felt being in a baseball stadium for a show?
Yeah, so first of all, it was very strange to be in Fenway for a rock concert, just in terms of, all the infrastructure is set up for baseball. And you're walking around and you're seeing Red Sox history and you're seeing Red Sox this and Red Sox that. They can put up as many tour posters and signs as they want. And they do this summer concert series every year at Fenway. And I think actually Post Malone was playing a couple days after Pearl Jam as well. So they were going to keep it going. It's not something that they're unfamiliar with doing in Boston, specifically at Fenway every single year. The sound was shockingly good. They had that stage set up in the middle of center field. The stage fit perfectly. The only part of the field that was not used for seats was the actual infield with the base paths and the pitcher's mound.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it sounded and looked just incredible. It was really great. Um, they they've fixed stadium lighting technology so that they can bring the lights up and bring them back down. Back in the
Yeah.
old days, those of us of our age know that it used to take 5 or 10 minutes for those lights to warm up and get going, but now they're just on and off and on and off.
Yeah.
And it was just phenomenal. I was surprised how much I enjoyed seeing a show in a venue that size, because I have seen a couple of shows in Cleveland Brown Stadium, which is a football stadium,
Yeah.
and it's not great. It's not.
Yeah.
It's less than great. It's pretty poor, actually.
That's why I was curious, because you don't see a baseball stadium as being like a natural place for a concert. It's not designed to contain the audio, and the way sort of an amphitheater is designed to disperse the audio out to the lawn. It's different, but so I was curious how well that would work, and I mean, I figured it probably worked pretty well because they've done Wrigley in the past. This isn't new for Pearl Jam necessarily, but I was just kind of curious because I don't know anybody that has been to a baseball show before.
But the really amazing thing is, I used to go to Fenway back in the 90s when I went to Boston University for baseball games, before all the upgrades and before they built up kind of a park like that. You're not going to change a lot of the interior or the actual park dimensions, but you're kind of going to build not a face. You're going to build the infrastructure around it, around the outside. And when I'm telling, things as simple as some of the most efficient restrooms I've ever been in my entire life. You got to figure a Pearl Jam show is like 80% dudes,
For sure.
80% 40 and 50 something year old dudes.
Yeah.
And I never had to wait more than a couple minutes to get to pee, which is like, giant stadium shows. That's a real issue when everybody's drinking way too much beer, which, that also takes place at Pearl Jam shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the actual venue, it worked really well to a shocking degree. That's not to say that it's my favorite way to see a show, and I wouldn't rush out to see just any band.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't go see. I guess the Cleveland version this year was Def Leppard, Journey, and Heart.
Yeah.
Certainly not going to see that.
Yeah.
For venue and artistic reasons.
Yeah.
But no, this was awesome.
Oh, cool. So, all right. So let's talk about this opening five a little bit. Footsteps is not a traditional opener. And it's certainly cool. So they've been doing this a lot on this tour where they would sort of start with like maybe two slower songs to kind of ease you into the night. And then you sort of hit this like 3 through 5, 6 section of sort of your hits or favorites or whatever, and then they would kind of merge their way into the dark matter meat of the set list. But I think what's interesting is getting Release as the second song, because I think if when you hear Footsteps as the opener, you are not expecting Release then to be
No.
the second song after that. So I'm curious to know just how that felt when all of a sudden you get through Footsteps and then they start playing the opening to Release, how that felt and how surprising that was.
Oh, it was an absolute shock. The pop when the noodling guitar part of
Yeah.
Release comes after the end of Footsteps. The place was just insane. And I wondered, I've had this thought that I was going to talk about this, and I wondered when I was going to bring this up, but I think now is the time. The my my big realization from these two shows, and especially when talking about a song like Release, is that Pearl Jam songs have lost all of their original meaning. You know,
Yeah.
when I first heard Release as a 12 or 13-year-old, you know, and all the angst of Alive and Even Flow and Jeremy and all that stuff, those songs did something for me that I can't go back in time and explain. But I didn't have any of those feelings. Every single Pearl Jam song puts a smile on your face now. It's every
Yeah.
single song is nothing but celebration. Celebration that the band is still playing them, that we're all still able to be there and hear them. But it's if you think about it too hard, it's a little bit disconcerting to just be smiling through Release and screaming every word and
For
singing
sure.
along. And um,
I
it's
think
it's a
it's
it's a really weird thing, but I love it.
I think it's in the Pearl Jam 20 documentary that towards the end, I think Ed even talks about like Alive and how that sort of has really changed its meaning to even to him over the years, that this like really difficult song about a traumatic experience in his youth has become this like celebration of the band still being here. We're all still alive, and the fans, fist pumping with it. It's just the ultimate like arena anthem celebrating life now, which is very much not what the song is about,
No,
and like you lose that sarcasm, the I'm still alive, and like the hard hitting sarcasm of that line. Like, is something wrong? She said, of course there is. I'm still alive, it like just thinking about that expression and how that's changed. And like, it's always been the case that like, to me, Release has always felt emotionally as a very interesting opening song. Like, it makes so much sense as the closing song on Release. It deals with him crying out to his father who's passed away. He never knew his father. And I mean, I get emotional just talking about what that song actually means. And so like, it's an interesting thing to have this expression at the front of a set list to like start the night off. But there is something uplifting about that. I've seen it live as well. For me, it was the opener. And like, just starting a show that way just sets you in such like a harmonic state of mind with the band, the environment. It's such a great opening song, and it has lost a little bit of that original meaning, at least I think to me it has. But
oh, for sure.
uh but yeah, that's awesome.
So then they follow that up with Given to Fly, Hail, Hail, and Corduroy, and just blew
That's
if the place had a roof, it would have been blown off. It was just uh, all killer, no filler. And that's like a murderer's row
oh,
in the middle of a set list.
these are like probably maybe like setting aside like Alive, Black, Daughter, like the hits, but like the quintessential like Pearl Jam sound. Like, if you were to ask me like three songs that sort of sum up the Pearl Jam sound, it might be these three songs: Given to Fly, Hail, Hail, and Corduroy. They all in different ways showcase what this band is great at. And to get those back to back to back, I mean, like you said, it's just truly a murderer's row of just quintessential Pearl Jam, quintessential live Pearl Jam. Like Given to Fly is one of the best songs they do live. Corduroy, one of my favorite songs they do live, and Hail Hail is just an all around live studio album, whatever, one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs.
And then, they get into the dark matter, Scared to Fear, React, Respond, which, you weren't kidding about the visuals. The program visuals that they've put out for this new record are just unbelievable. If you're going to play a large format venue like Fenway Park, you better bring the goods with the stage show. And this is something that you and I have talked about has not been a major part of Pearl Jam shows, where sometimes they would go without the backdrop altogether in a lot of cases, because in basketball arenas, they'd have fans sitting behind them and they'd play to the back of the room as well as the front of the room. But now with this, it's a new element, and it's very welcomed, if you ask me.
So was I correct in my prediction that you would actually love React Respond live versus how you feel about it on album? Because Ed's vocal delivery is entirely different live. Of that.
When he's doing it live, he can't do any of the kind of stylistically stilted things that he does on the record. And the song just crushes. It just absolutely crushes. The audience loves it. The way he's moving back and forth with the different sections, and he's pointing this way and that way. He certainly isn't the same guy who hung from the rafters and was stage diving off of the opera box in a theater, but you can tell that it's the same guy, just older.
And React Respond is also a great Jeff Ament song too.
It is
one of the ones. Did he have the neon bass for it? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so then they went into Down, In My Tree, and Wreckage. I thought Wreckage played really well. The audience was way into it at my show.
Oh, interesting. That's polar opposite from mine. Yeah.
It might just be a Boston thing. I hate the only in New York, things are a little bit different in Boston, or like these too precious type of sentiments about certain cities. But Boston is a particular town with a particular type of person. It doesn't surprise me that they might have a different sort of vibe with certain songs than other cities. Just something in the water that, whatever. I hate to give it too much mystique, but I'm telling you, that song absolutely killed live because people were waiting for it. You could tell that they had listened to it a bunch, and they were excited to hear it. There was a pop in the audience when the opening notes came out. And so, it worked really well. And then, but you didn't even have a chance to react to it because they went straight into Even Flow. Another one that, they can occasionally save that for later. They know that is probably their most played song live.
It is
next to Alive.
It is their most. It tops Alive. Their most played live song is Even Flow.
And again, one of those songs that lost all its meaning. It's just celebration, but man, is it a celebration!
Yeah.
And then into Dark Matter, you were 100% right about Do the Evolution. So you had some additional information from your drummer friend about what maybe is making Do the Evolution better live today than it used to be. So I'm going to give you the floor here for a minute.
Yeah, so they dramatically slowed the pace down of that song. And let me see how I'm going to fill time here while quickly trying to reference a text message my buddy sent me.
I'm pretty sure I remember the actual beats per minute. I think was like the
Oh, I've got it.
You can correct me, but let's test my memory. I think the studio version is somewhere around 150, and they're playing it at like 138 beats per minute.
I actually don't know what the studio is, but he referenced Cleveland in 2006. He went back and listened. It was at 161 beats per minute. On the 2024 tour, they've been playing it on average at 138 beats per minute. I mean, that is a significant slowdown in that song, and it makes that song just really sort of just take on a life of its own.
It
It's
takes
got
the chaos out and it gives it more meat.
yeah, meat. That's a great way to put it. It hits harder. It's heavier. I he my buddy also mentioned that Matt even has mixed up his drum part on it a little bit. He's sort of, when you're playing it that fast, it gets a little bit harder to be creative with, you know, some of the fills you're doing. And I think as they've slowed it down, he's made that drum part a little bit more intricate as well. And that combined with the visuals that they have for that song, which is cut up pieces of the Do the Evolution video, that song hits so hard live, and it's one of my absolute favorite songs that they do live now. To me, it's become an absolute staple of their live show.
So after that, a little bit of dark humor from Eddie. They played Glorified G, and
I
then he
saw
said,
this.
and then afterwards he said, "All right, here's another gun song," and they went into Jeremy, which was like,
So
ooh, ouch.
didn't he mention something about Ted Nugent as well? Because there was
It
like a
was
little bit of
brief. It
a
was more brief than the last time he mentioned Ted Nugent.
there was some kind of a back and forth, I guess, through the media or whatever between Ed and
Yeah.
Ted Nugent. But yeah, like Glorified G being the ultimate like tongue-in-cheek anti-gun song. You know, the Pearl Jam lore of this song is that that it's basically making fun of Dave Abruzzesi's, I never know if I pronounced that right, but the Pearl Jam drummer at the time, Dave A, as we always called him, was bragging about a gun he had bought or something, like totally oblivious to the fact, I guess, of Ed's anti-gun stance, and he turned it into a song. I don't know if it was directly making fun of Dave, but probably is. But it's like become like this really like sort of funny tongue-in-cheek anti-gun song. So
And so then they played Jeremy, and once again, just one of the most caustic songs in all of Pearl Jam's catalog. And everyone's just doing their falsetto whew, along in the stadium, and it was almost like a party song, which is again so weird, but it was awesome. And then because Ed's daughter Olivia was on hand, they played something special. She, by the way, she sang "My Father's Daughter" both nights with Glenn Hansard and his
so
band.
cool.
And so Ed's daughter sang this song, I think, as part of a movie soundtrack.
Yep.
Flag Day.
Yeah.
Is it Flag Day?
I don't know. That sounds right to me, but I know she did
Okay.
it as part of that of a soundtrack.
And Ed and Glenn also had a really phenomenal song that they did together on that soundtrack as well. They never played that one. Glenn Hansard did great as an opener. He's
Yes.
just awesome. And so, yeah, she was on hand. So they played something special on night one. They did not play it on night two. Spoiler alert. And then they finished their main set with Rearview Mirror, which I remember as they finished that and they go to the encore break, I was sitting there with my friend and we're like, okay, we're going through the list of songs that we'd already heard, and we're like, all right, what are they even going to play in the encore? I mean, there's plenty of things to choose from, but you know, obviously Alive hadn't been played yet, but Rearview Mirror, Corduroy, Even Flow are all off the table. Given to Fly, off the table. There's so many songs that were just off the table from that killer first set.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it was, you know, your night one set list was definitely heavy on a lot of like, well, you know, some not like super, a couple pretty rare songs. You know, Glorified G does not get played a ton. You know, that one was pretty rare. But you also even had like what I call like the pseudo rare songs, like In My Tree is not something that gets played a ton. Down does not get played a ton.
Right.
Even Footsteps doesn't get played all that often. Like there was a really nice mix. And then, you know, even we haven't gotten to it yet, but like State of Love and Trust is not a song that actually gets played all that much. Let
me just list the encore and then we'll finish our conversation about night one.
Sure.
So he opens the encore with Just Breathe. He plays Song of Good Hope with Glenn Hansard, which is a Glenn Hansard song. Then, for almost no apparent reason, they decided to honor a request and they played Blood, which I don't think they ever. It says here that it's the first time they've played it since 2018.
Yeah, very, very rare to hear that these days.
Then Better Man, into Setting Sun, into State of Love and Trust, and they finished the night with Alive. Oh no, wait.
Rockin'. Yeah. Oh well, Alive, Rockin' in the Free World, and Yellow Ledbetter.
My browser took a crap here. So
yeah. So yeah, after State of Love and Trust was Alive, Rockin' in the Free World, Yellow Ledbetter.
Okay. Yeah. And then McCready played the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, absolutely awesome. McCready was on fire. I wouldn't say it was a McCready heavy show. The band was very balanced all night. But I can't wait to talk about night 2 and who had the heavy night on night 2. But so that was night 1, and I didn't really feel between having the better seats on night 1 and that set list. I certainly didn't think they could top it on night 2.
And the narrator, they topped it on night 2.
I don't know, not for me, maybe. Okay. But
well, we'll talk. We'll get to that. But yeah, I think the night 1 set list was, I mean, it was ridiculous. Really good. And I like getting to see even like Blood was certainly really cool. And like State of Love and Trust somehow is like an underrated Pearl Jam song. Like,
let me give a hot take. Let me give a hot take about Blood. So Blood is like a rare Pokemon card or something. So like I collected it, but as far as Pearl Jam songs I want to hear live, like, all right, I'm going to hear Ed leave his vocal cords on the stage for no apparent reason. Like, it's not one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs. I'd rather hear Animal. I'd rather hear any number of songs from Versus over that one. But it's a rarity, and I got to hear it. So now it's in my collector card bin.
Yeah, like it actually is one of my favorite songs on Versus.
Does that make sense, though, what I'm saying?
But no, it totally does. However, like what I was going to say is it did not used to be a rare song. Like you go back to the 90s, Blood was in tons of their sets, and it was always one of my favorite songs live. Like they played it the first time I ever saw them in 96 in Toledo. They played it. It's one of the standout songs for me. When they were young and angry, like Blood just killed live. It was like the most important song in the world to me. Like it carried that much weight. And it's funny because as they're like now in their 60s, the song Blood, yeah, we talk about songs changing their meaning. Like it's hard to have the visceral anger that you need to talk about what, particularly from Ed's perspective, when he's talking in Blood, the song is entirely about, his relationship to the media and the way he felt like he was being sucked dry by the media, being used for whatever different storylines. And it was just this like, talking about that turmoil that doesn't exist today. Ed is clearly very comfortable with his status where he's at as a rock star or rock icon today. And so that song just can't carry that same weight, but also just being older, you can't give that song its vitality the way maybe perhaps that it deserves. So it totally makes sense that like.
Do you want to know why they played it? This is great.
Sure.
They played it because there's a super fan in the audience with a sign who happened to be a hematologist.
Oh, okay. He has really good stories for his requests that he takes on this tour, by the way. If you listen to the bootlegs, like almost every request they do has like a good story behind it. So
I don't even know if that's real, but it's a good story. He said it.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, we were on absolute cloud 9. We were just over a mile away from Fenway at our hotel, and with surge pricing and the train stations and everything else, we walked it and we had zero complaints about it. It was perfect. Just perfect.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was night 1. Any other night 1 questions?
Uh, I don't think so, other than I'm kind of curious because while I have seen consecutive shows of a Pearl Jam tour, I've never seen them back to back in the same city.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of just curious what sort of that mindset is. You have a day off in between, and kind of like what your thoughts are being in the same city, going to see them again. Like, what's that energy like? What are your expectations going into a second show in the same city?
That's a perfect question, and it leads me to something that I forgot to talk about. So when we arrived on Saturday, we couldn't walk 5 steps without seeing somebody in a Pearl Jam shirt. It was like a Pearl Jam convention had taken over the entire city.
Yeah.
There were mostly dads and their kids and some wives, but mostly dads, just not only being there for Pearl Jam, but wearing it loud and proud. Um,
I
you know,
think we
on the
talked about that like after I went to the Indianapolis show and we talked about it. I said I don't think there's any band whose fans wear the shirt of the band they're going to see more than Pearl Jam.
and I've never seen fans buy more merch in my entire life.
Yeah,
There were like guys who are probably doctors and lawyers and whatever else buying every single shirt and every single poster, and then carrying it all away to squirrel away in their hotel room,
yeah,
so that they could prove to everybody that they could wear nothing but Pearl Jam every day of a week.
yeah,
Um, it was just unbelievable. I did buy one T-shirt. I'm usually not merch guy. I bought a
yeah,
T-shirt and I bought
yeah.
a poster from directly from the artist after the fact, so that it would get shipped to my house because I flew. I didn't want to fly with a poster tube.
Tube. Yeah,
Um, and honestly, I don't. I'm not the Pearl Jam fan that wants to wear the Pearl Jam shirt all the time. I'll probably wear that
yeah.
thing a few times. I might actually frame it. It was a cool shirt.
So my next question, and maybe this is hard to answer now that you sort of know what they did play on night two, but was
Mhm.
there any songs that you were disappointed you didn't get that you were like, God, I hope they get to that in night two?
Black.
Oh,
Black
yeah,
was the one on the left on the floor on the table that I wanted to hear, and spoiler alert, I got to hear it.
yeah.
So it was really good.
Were there any songs that you wanted to hear again? I'm just kind of curious. Like, I
Oh,
mean,
that's a good
you
question.
probably knew you were going to get some of the Dark Matter stuff a second time, but like,
I would love to hear Given to Fly every single show that I ever see Pearl Jam ever.
yeah,
That's my live song. It's probably it's probably not my favorite Pearl Jam song of all time. And then of all the songs that I wanted to hear live that I absolutely almost unequivocally knew that I would never get to hear, it was probably Sirens
yeah,
or Amongst the Waves. I just knew that those weren't going to hit the set list.
yeah. I'm actually surprised they don't play Sirens more.
It's a
This is
really weird guitar tuning from what I
yeah,
understand.
okay, makes sense, but
Not
yeah,
that that's not an impediment to a band like Pearl Jam with 17 guitar techs, but
right, sure. So cool. Yeah. Well, so then,
now I'm going to be honest. In my old man brain, where like I've got a real job and I have all these responsibilities and I'm away from my family. I have two sons, one who's 14 and one who's 12, and I'm really kind of like really using up a lot of my dad equity to take this trip and be gone for 4 days. So by Monday, I was kind of like getting that anxiety going, I probably should have just come to one show, probably should have gone home. Did I, it was really selfish and greedy of me to stay for 2 shows. Not
yeah,
even the money, like the time and,
sure,
putting my wife out with all the responsibilities while I'm gone. But
sure.
that's just between us. Don't tell anybody I said that. Okay. Because
Right.
next time a trip comes up,
Well, they also again, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but they definitely paid you off with a pretty epic show in night two.
yeah.
So,
All right, so let's do it. They open with elderly woman.
which is an
Str-
awesome. I've seen them open with that. I love that as a show opener because
I
you
was
get the crowd.
shocked it was an
You get
opener.
you get. I think it was Cleveland. I think it was Cleveland. I saw them do it. '06,
It's a hell of a
maybe.
sing along.
Maybe, yeah. It's awesome way to get the band. Like so Ed pretty much let the band do the entire second verse for him when it was. I thought that was an awesome way to open a show, actually.
Yeah.
And
So,
then
and then straight into even flow.
that's
And
amazing. As the
yes.
second song of the night being Even Flow, like holy shit! Like just jumping right into no warm up for that one, just right
Yeah.
into it.
And then into daughter, into animal, into save you, into immortality, into corduroy. So I
Oof.
felt like I got a mini version of the Vitalogy show,
Yeah,
a little Vitalogy heavy. Immortality is one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs. It's in terms of a live song, it's maybe not as clean a pick in a set list because it definitely changes the energy of the building. But it's awesome. Everybody loves it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure.
But to
Like,
follow it up with corduroy is pretty perfect.
yeah. And so, like, at that point, you know, you're probably almost feeling like your chances of getting Not For You were probably slipping away at that point. But you
Yes.
actually, well, I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit
No, it's
again,
fine.
but
Yeah, they played React Respond, Running, and then straight into Not For You, and then Wreckage. And Not For You, it's a, I know I'm a broken record on this, but you want to talk about a song that completely lost its meaning. You know,
yeah.
here we are in a baseball stadium, the ultimate sign of selling out, um, and all happily doing so.
For sure. And like, Not For You is still like one of the coolest songs because, like, musically, like, there's not that much to the song. You know,
No,
the verse and the chorus are essentially the same. You know, uh it like it's not like the most intricate song, but like it's intricate in its simplicity in that way. Like, it's really clever song structure and song design. And that song just always just crushes live. Always. I got to see that at Indianapolis. I was stoked. And yeah, you got to see it here night too.
so I would say for me, and I'm jumping ahead too, but I would say for me, night two was more of my dark matter payoff. Night one was my fan service payoff. I think
Yeah.
night two was more of the dark matter because they played. All right, I'm jumping ahead. They played Wreckage. They played. So this is the part of the set list where I think it's more of an Andrew set list than a Craig set list. They played Untitled in present tense. And I'm going to let you talk about it because you know more about those two songs and playing Untitled. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to let you talk about it.
So Untitled is essentially a pre-tag. So Pearl Jam they'll do lots of tags on their song, like Better Man. They'll put Save It for Later at the end, or whatever. Not For You, you got Modern Girl. I got It's Okay. Daughter, they'll do like Another Brick in the Wall. So they always do like these tags. Well, Untitled is a pre-tag to MFC. So on the Live on Two Legs live album is like the first time I ever heard it, but they played it a lot on the Yield tour. So MFC, song on Yield, it is not preceded by Untitled on the album, but live they were always playing this song called Untitled first, and it really is just a simple intro. It's not like a full on song. It's just this really pretty intro that leads just perfectly into MFC. And so what's interesting is they played Untitled here, but they did not follow it up with MFC. They followed it up with Present Tense. And I believe, to my knowledge, that is only the second time they have ever played Untitled without following it up with MFC. So
That's
that
just
in
a
and of
nod to the super
itself
fans.
is a super rare thing. To just throw Untitled randomly into the middle of a set list. Very interesting. But it
It's
kind
like a
of,
complete Easter egg, you know?
yeah, for sure. Now, what's what's interesting about that, like I'm trying to remember, but like, so Ed does not play guitar at the start of Present Tense.
I don't think so, no.
Does he play guitar at all on Present Tense? I'm trying to remember if that's an Ed guitar song or
I can't
not. I
remember.
can't remember off the top of my head, but obviously, like the whole
Because
first verse is
also,
just
as he gets, as he,
verse is just Mike on guitar, and then slowly the band comes in as the song builds. But so if Ed is playing guitar, it's not till the crescendo at the end. So what's
but
interesting
also
about that
as he
is,
gets older, I feel like Ed takes some liberties and picks up the guitar
yeah,
sometimes when he didn't in the old days.
for sure. But I was just curious about that because obviously Untitled is Ed playing guitar and
Yeah,
singing. So it's kind of a, from that standpoint, maybe it's not as natural of a flow into MFC because Ed plays the intro guitar part to MFC as well. So it kind
yeah.
of makes sense there. It's a little bit different, but sonically, I can see that working as an intro to Present Tense.
So then this is where the dark matter payoff comes. I got to hear Won't Tell live,
I'm very
which
jealous of that.
I very much wanted to hear that one live. Um, they played so the if you've seen any pictures from the show, the moon looked absolutely insane up over Fenway. The pictures are absolutely incredible, and so they decided to play Super Blood Wolf Moon, which, all right, for me, I'm just gonna go thumbs down on that one. I don't care about that song at all.
You weren't here for the Gigaton shout out?
No, but it worked. I mean, it made sense, and other people seemed to be happy, so I'm happy that they were happy. I don't want to complain too much.
Sure.
Out of 30 songs or 28 songs, or whatever it was, they're entitled to kind of make some choices.
It's
I don't
another
have to
Pokemon.
love.
It's another Pokemon card for you. You can
Yeah,
knock it off the list.
I don't have to love everything.
Yeah.
And then they absolutely crushed the end of the opening set. They once into Black, into the Neil Young cover Fucking Up, to Porch.
And I mentioned this in the Porch is my absolute favorite main set ender. I love when they end a set with Porch. That's what I got at indie. Like Rearview Mirror, they do a lot as in that role, and I really do like Rearview Mirror a lot live. And it works in that role. Corduroy they'll do sometimes there, but like for me, Porch is just the ultimate send off to the main set. Like I love that as a main set closer.
And so they enter the encore, which, as you talked about previously, was just Eddie solo, and he opened with "I Am a Patriot," which is the
Oh,
Little
I love
Steven
that.
cover. It was
They have
very
not
good.
been doing that. So they did that back in like '03. They were playing it a lot. I saw it in Cleveland in '03, I want to say. Um, and I really love that cover. And I've been kind of missing it. Like I was kind of sad they don't really do it much. So I thought it was cool that Ed broke that out. It makes sense to do it in Boston, you know.
Yeah. And so then Glenn Hansard comes on, and they do the Glenn Hansard song. It's technically the Swell Season song. Falling Slowly is from the movie Once. Um, I I couldn't be a bigger fan of that song. I'm a huge Glenn Hansard fan. When the movie Once came out and the Swell Season went on tour in celebration of the success of that, I went to a theater in Chicago and I saw the Swell Season. And Glenn Hansard, first of all, he opened. I don't know if he opened, but he grabbed his acoustic guitar. He walked in front of the microphones. He got everybody to be quiet, and he played "Say It to Me Now" completely acoustic in the Chicago theater, and just blew the place up with that. But the big song from that movie and the big song was "Falling Slowly." And I've watched YouTube videos of he and Ed doing that song before, to kind of mixed results, but man, did they kill it. They have refined it. They've perfected it. Glenn Hansard sings the high parts. Ed sings. Glenn Hansard's the only guy in the world who can force Ed into the middle or low harmonies, and it just
Yeah.
works. It absolutely worked, and it felt like the whole crowd knew the song and was really into it. Um, that after that, the band comes back on. They played "Why Go," and then finally the ultimate dark matter payoff. I got to hear
Yeah.
"Waiting for Stevie" live. which was just an absolute thrill. That's the I don't it's that like the fourth or fifth time they've played it ever, I
Yeah,
think.
it's not a ton. It's
Um,
pretty rare when they have it. And in no way am I jealous and upset about the fact that it was written on the Indianapolis set list and then they decided not to play it last minute. But
yeah.
that's life.
And then they played Crazy Mary, which is one of my favorite from with Sweet Relief. Was that
Sweet
the
relief. The
it's a
Victoria
Victoria Williams.
Williams.
Yep.
Yeah. I always get
Uh,
Victoria and Lucinda mixed up, but it
yep.
was Victoria. Yeah.
And then they played Unthought Known,
Which
Do
I
the
love that
Evolution.
song. I
So this is another
unthought.
Andrew one.
Oh my god, do I love that song? Like
It's good. I love it too.
I gotta be honest. Like I really feel like Backspacer gets a bit of a bad rap. I think that album is a lot better than fans give it credit for.
I
And
agree.
Unthought Known is absolutely one of my favorite songs on that album. I love when they play that song live. They don't do it very often anymore, but I think that song kills live. So very, very cool that you got that mixed in.
Yeah, that's an absolute underrated Pearl Jam record
Yeah,
from a relatively unremarkable period of the band, granted, but
for sure.
that's just a great, great album. All right, so then they do the Evolution again, Alive, Baba O'Reilly, the Who cover, and they close with Yellow Ledbetter one more time. And my only, you know, only somebody who's spoiled enough to go to two shows could be disappointed that they close with Yellow Ledbetter twice.
I thought for sure
Um,
you were going to get Indifference the second night. I really
I thought
thought
so
you were
too.
going to get that. But
And so I'm left going, which show was better? I don't know. Like I said, the first one, I don't know that I could choose which one was better. I had better seats for the first show. There was more fan service in the first show, but like the Dark Matter payoff felt amazing. Hearing hearing Waiting for Stevie live was just absolutely unbelievable. The version of Falling Slowly you did with Glenn Hansard was absolutely off the charts.
we
Um,
we would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that night 2 had 29 songs. Like
yes.
they went all out. Like that is an absolute marathon show for 2024 live Pearl Jam. Like this show, like I wasn't there obviously, but clearly it was a celebration of the end of the. I mean, they're playing Ohana Fest, but this was the end of the American tour for 2024, and they definitely chose to go out with a bang.
So the one thing that I asked you that I'm going to answer for myself now um, is, obviously I would love to see Pearl Jam more times, but if for some reason these two shows were the last time I ever got to see Pearl Jam live, I'm good, man. They were so good. These set lists were so good. The band was so on. And by the way, night two, I forgot to mention this. It was a Stone Gossard night.
Mm.
Stone has embraced, and no shade. He's a man in his 60s and he's earned all the equity in the world, but he's in his full dad mode now.
Oh yeah.
But he was on. He was absolutely on night two. Maybe he was celebrating the fact that this was the end of the tour. But you talk about how there are McCready nights and they're more frequent than any other than Ed. As
Yeah.
goes Ed, goes Pearl Jam. Mike McCready carries a lot of shows because he's just so histrionic and so emotional and incredible when he's playing the guitar. But night two was an absolute Stone Gossard night. He was showing off. He was having a good time. You could just feel his energy from his side of the stage. And I felt like that was kind of a rarity too.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I will say is that you and I are two of the biggest Josh Klinghoffer fans in the world.
Mm-hmm.
He was very understated. He was very much a backup member of the band this time, whereas the last time I saw them in Madison Square Garden in New York, I felt like he was really imposing his will. He was really aiding the band. And
That's
I
how I
don't
felt in Indianapolis about him.
and I don't think it's a shot at Josh. I think it's actually a testament to where the main members of Pearl Jam are today versus where they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounds like you are coming away from this feeling very much like I did, like really almost just in awe of where this band is in 2024 at this age to be able to perform this well. Still, it's so much more than we have any right to expect, or so much more than we deserve. It's just such a blessing that we've lost so much of that era of music that means so much to us, and to have this band still intact, still just bringing it night in and night out. It was funny. I don't know if you happened to see, but Pearl Jam was featured on CBS Sunday
I
Morning
did see that.
this weekend, and the last question the guy asked, it was Ed and Jeff, and the guy asked him, "So, do you guys still love playing live?" And you see this hesitation, and they both kind of look at each other, and Ed just kind of laughs. He's like, "That's the wrong question to ask," or something like that. Like, I think it's clear, like, the sets are shorter. There's more breaks between the shows. They're not playing as many cities. They're in their 60s. This isn't easy for them, I don't think, anymore. But they don't let us see that when you go to the show. When you go to the show, they're giving us everything they have. And it's, I don't know, like, I don't know how, I almost don't have the words to put into like the appreciation I have for the fact that we can still see this great band and that they're still doing their thing at this point. We should just cherish it, because we don't know that they'll tour again. I assume they will, but we don't
I
know.
don't know that I do. Would it
We're
shock
getting to
you
the
if this was their retirement tour?
The only reason it would shock me is because Stone has talked about how enthusiastic he is to actually do another album. And I always feel like Stone is sort of the one you really need to get on board, because as much as, as much as Ed is, the front and center, Pearl Jam, to me, is only as great as Stone Gossard is involved. When Stone Gossard is energized and feeling a part of it, Pearl Jam is better for it. And for me, I see, like, this is going to sound hypocritical of me because of how much I praised Gigaton when it came out, but that was almost like special circumstances that what that album meant to me coming out right
Yeah.
in the heart of COVID lockdowns. But like, that album is very much not a Stone Gossard album. He only had one songwriting credit on the album. It's Buckle Up. To me, like, Gigaton was such a Jeff album, and like, I love that. Like, I love Jeff Ament. I'm a huge Jeff Ament fan, but like, you were missing that dynamic that Stone sort of brings to it. So this is a long-winded answer to your question, but Stone has talked in the press. He seems to be enthusiastic about another Pearl Jam album. I think Ed has made some comments that he thinks they've got another couple albums in them yet. So I think they might strike while the iron is hot. And I maybe we won't even have quite as long of a wait for the next album. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. So I would be pretty surprised if they didn't tour again, but I would not be shocked if this was it.
Yeah. So, and I guess it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the energy and the vibes and the celebratory nature of the way this band felt interacting with each other and jumping around on stage, it could have been the victory tour. But also, maybe the vibes are just so good that they will keep going for a little while longer.
Right.
But I I don't think we have 20 more years with Pearl Jam. I don't
Right.
think it's the Rolling Stones. So, um, and it's that kind of energy that I felt in the audience where everybody was really cherishing it. It's the
Yeah.
energy I saw in the merch lines when people were just
Yeah.
loading up. Um, Everybody is just very grateful to have this band around, and it's not a cheap imitation. It's not uh, Eddie Vedder's Pearl Jam,
Yeah.
like so many of these bands that have one original member and a backup band of hired guns. Like, this is
Yeah.
essentially the same band that we fell in love with. Even the new guy, Matt Cameron, has been a part of that
He's
team
the
for a
old guy
long
at this
time.
point. Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
and he was part of their community even before the band, even before he was part of the band. So
Correct.
this
Yep.
this feels like the original lineup.
It really does. It feels like Matt Cameron was the guy that was always meant to become the drummer of Pearl Jam. I think a lot of fans will always have Dave A special spot because he drummed on Versus and Vitology. Like he was the drummer for the height of Pearl Jam's popularity. And then
and stylistically, he's the way I think of Pearl Jam drumming still, even with Matt Cameron.
And I think that Jack Irons, while he's maybe not everybody's cup of tea as a drummer on a technical proficiency scale, I do think he was what the band needed at that time. And he delivered No Code and Yield, arguably my two favorite Pearl Jam albums. So you have to have a certain appreciation for that as well. But to me at this point, Matt Cameron, he's been the drummer since 1998. He is a Pearl Jam member. I don't even think of him as the Soundgarden guy anymore. He just feels like Pearl Jam's drummer. So yeah, this essentially what you see with Pearl Jam is still the core band to this day.
All right, last but not least, Saturday comes, I drag my old ass to the grog shop and I see Foxing, and I'm just going to leave it there because you and I are going to deep dive on that record, and I will talk about that show when we talk about the Foxing record. So that's your homework. Listen to the new Foxing record. You and I both love it, and we're going to talk about it a lot.
But yes, man, I have so much to say about that album.
On the Pearl Jam.
So we're gonna have to punt. We're gonna have to punt on the Foxing Live, which is fine. We can tie it in with the album. So,
but just know that it was very difficult after so many shows over 4 days and all the travel and finishing off my week of work to drag myself out, but it was worth it. Always go to the show. It's hard.
Craig's a better man than I am. I wussed out. I was supposed to see him in Columbus Sunday night, but I didn't get back into town until late, and I was tired. And
Sunday night is tough, dude.
It was. I just couldn't quite get myself, and I have so much regret. It's not even funny. I thoroughly regret that I didn't go.
And you don't have this snazzy T-shirt that our friends on YouTube are seeing.
That's right. Unfortunately, I do have the album on vinyl though.
Ooh, look at you.
So,
all right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe. Go to albumofrecord.com. That's our home base. Subscribe to the YouTube. Tell a friend. Help us make this thing grow. We're having a blast doing it, and we'll talk to you next time.